Why is your gun in this girl's car?
I don't know.
Do you remember pulling down your pants?
No. I haven't drank in a very long time.
Were you guys over by Dave and Buster's?
I don't know.
Do you remember following the girl to her car?
I don't.
He had done too many things in front of too many cameras. His plan was to take her somewhere and harm her. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Just thought, this poor girl.
Erinn Orcutt grew up in Ontario, California. At 25, she separated from her ex-husband and was a new mother to her son, whom she loved spending time with. Erinn was living with her mother and stepfather, which was only a half-hour away from her place of work. She was a cocktail waitress at the Dave & Buster's restaurant located at the Ontario Mills Mall. Erinn was usually at work from Thursday night to Sunday afternoon before she could return and spend the rest of the week with her son. This was why she was excited to have the rest of her afternoon off on April 3, 2010. That warm spring day, she worked the lunch shift, and when customers were sparse, her manager told her that she could clock out and go home. She was planning to spend time with her son. Instead, her day took a darker turn when she got to her car. Her car was an SUV with a built-in automatic lock you can control with the car key buttons. One press unlocked only the driver's door, and twice for all doors as a form of security for lone drivers. Unfortunately, Erinn had the habit of clicking the unlock button twice, even when she was alone. This was a fatal mistake. When she opened her door, a man opened the passenger's side. At first, she thought it was just a coworker pulling a prank on her. Instead, it was a stranger pointing a gun at her. He was huge. The single mother estimated him to be roughly twice her size. Even without the gun, she knew that he could easily overpower her. She couldn't believe what was happening. It was the middle of the day, and they were at the mall parking lot. But just as the restaurant she worked in was empty, so was the parking lot that day. It was a rare instance that set the stage for her nightmare. Hope sparked in her as she saw a second man approach, asking the gunman what he was doing. The second man was heavyset and was probably larger than the gunman, but her hope was short-lived when she realized something was off with the second man. There was a chuckle in his voice and a smirk on his face. The gunman had an accomplice. Her last hope was if someone would accidentally pass by, but this was made impossible by the heavy-set accomplice of the gunman who blocked the only direction anyone would see the gun that was held waist-height. The gunman turned to him and said, "Don't worry about it." To Erinn's horror, the gunman's friend laughed. In her mind, she promoted the friend to an accomplice. It was apparent to her that pulling a gun on someone was cause for alarm, not laughter. Erinn could run. There was enough space for that, with the parking lot almost empty. But she was worried that he could easily shoot her, leaving her son without a mother. She wasn't going to take that chance. The gunman told her to get in the car, and she had no choice but to follow his command. She got into the driver's seat while the huge man got into the passenger side. He told her to drive, and they pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the accomplice behind. She silently cursed at what was happening to her, thinking that it wasn't fair. She didn't do anything to deserve it. And the worst part was that the man pointing a gun at her didn't care about any of that. Erinn begged the strange man to let her go. She pleaded, "You can take my car. I'm not worried about it. I won't call the cops. Just take my car and let me out." The gunman didn't answer her pleas, but he also didn't tell her where to drive. Her mind raced. She grew up in that area, so she knew well where cops tended to hang out. So she aimed for those places. There was also an array of options in her mind, each one increasingly desperate. She thought of putting the car in park and running away, driving the car off the road, or maybe ramming into someone. She couldn't do any of it because the man ordered her to pull over. She drove into a restaurant lot where she usually saw 1 or 2 cop patrol cars parked. She was hoping someone would be there and that it would be enough to scare the gunman off. Her spirit dropped when she saw that, like the mall parking lot, it was also empty. The man wanted her to drive to the back of a storage facility building attached to the parking lot. Fortunately for Erinn, there was a gate barring their way. The man wanted her to go through it so they could access the back of the facility, but it was locked, and they wouldn't be able to open it without a code. The man was angry and frustrated. He wanted to take her to a more private place. He kept telling Erinn to drive around to the back, but she told him there was no back. He settled for the farthest parking unit nearest the gate of the storage facility. Erinn thought to herself that he wouldn't be able to do anything to her. There was no way. She parked the car facing a window. There was a storage facility on the side. There was a gas station nearby. There was a Denny's behind her car, and even a liquor store. There was no way anything was going to happen. Despite everything she told herself, she turned out wrong. The moment that she parked her car, the man turned to her and pointed the gun at her. He told her to get into the back seat. Scared for her life, she complied and shifted her body through the seats to get into the back. Her initial shock at what was happening to her turned into despair. She knew that something terrible was going to happen to her at that moment, so she started crying as the man got into the back seat with her. There was no way he could do anything in broad daylight in the middle of all those establishments, but she forgot that her car had dark-tinted windows, preventing anyone from seeing what was happening inside. It was a disturbing sight for her as the man, still pointing a gun at her, chose to sit on top of the baby seat. She was acutely reminded of her son waiting for her at home and why she needed to survive whatever terrible thing was coming her way. The man ordered her to take her clothes off, and her terror went up multiple knots. Erinn cried and desperately pleaded with him to let her go. He ordered her to stop crying, demonstrating he meant business. The man racked the gun. A bullet tumbled out, landing on the car seat beside Erinn, with the barrel merely inches from her head and the sight of the ejected bullet. Realization hit her hard, the gun was fully loaded. At that exact moment, an overwhelming fear enveloped her. She was certain about the man's intentions, and the hopelessness of her situation bore down on her. Though the man tried multiple times, his body betrayed him. His malicious intent was clear, but he couldn't act upon it. This only served to increase his frustration. It wasn't just about power. It seemed he also wanted to taunt her. Erinn's heart raced as she realized he was pointing a camera phone at her instead of the gun. Blinded momentarily by the flash, she flinched. He smirked and took another picture, then coldly ordered, "Smile," capturing yet another chilling image. The man sent these photos to the accomplice they left at the mall parking lot, and soon, they were talking on the phone. To Erinn's disbelief, he was actually joking around with his friend on the phone. His friend asked him where he was, and he answered that he was somewhere near and he could see him. He was laughing on his phone one moment, and the next, he was staring at her with rage in his eyes. The physical violence resumed with vigor, and Erinn couldn't do anything but curl up and make herself as small a target as possible. Suddenly, the man stopped. He began to look around slowly, with thoughtful movements. Then he turned to Erinn. Looking puzzled, he asked her where they were and whose car they were in. Erinn, taken aback by this change, carefully answered his questions. She told him that they were in her car, and he had made her drive from the mall. After about an hour, the man ordered Erinn to get dressed and she had no choice but to comply. She thought her suffering was over, but her heart raced when he said, "We're going to the desert and finish this." She knew she had to get away right then and there. If she waited, she would lose her chance. As she was getting dressed, she discreetly noticed that his gun had fallen to the floor and was then under the passenger seat, and that was when an idea formed in her mind. Aside from the car key security feature of her car, she also had child locks on the side where her son's baby seat was. When the gunman's phone rang, Erinn's survival instincts kicked in. She threw open the door on her side, the one without the child lock, and bolted out. It was her only chance, and she had to take it. Desperately running for her life, she warned people with piercing screams that the man coming after her had a gun and that they should go back inside. Unaware that the liquor store owner had already noticed her SUV and was suspicious due to its prolonged presence and unusual activity, Erinn sprinted into his store. The gunman, instead of pursuing her, tried to escape in her car but was thwarted by an undisclosed security measure that disabled the vehicle. Frustrated, he fled on foot, getting lost in the traffic. Detective Robert Marquez of the Ontario Police Department was among the first responders. The gun found at the scene was a significant lead, as it had the suspect's name clearly taped to the bottom, a labeling method Detective Marquez recognized. Meanwhile, Officer Anthony Orban had reported his gun missing in the Ontario area. Detectives linked the stolen gun to the suspect in Erinn's case, leading them to Orban and his friend, Jeffrey Jelinek, who matched the descriptions provided by Erinn. With Erinn safely in a police cruiser, she identified Orban and Jelinek in a parking lot under floodlights. She was shocked to discover that her attacker was a police officer, which heightened her fear about the possibility of evading justice. Both Orban and Jelinek were taken into custody. During interrogation, they claimed to have no memory of the incident. Orban's response was marked by defensiveness, asserting that alcohol and medication contributed to his blackout. Jelinek, however, surrendered his phone, which contained disturbing photos of Erinn and incriminating text messages. Despite Orban's insistence on his innocence, the overwhelming evidence led to his indictment. While awaiting trial, Orban made threatening phone calls to Erinn, which were recorded. Concerned for her safety, the district attorney's office placed Erinn in witness protection. During the 2012 trial, Orban pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, attributing his actions to the effects of Zoloft combined with alcohol. He also spoke about his personal troubles and PTSD from military service. Orban's wife supported his claims about the influence of medication on his behavior. Jelinek, seeking leniency, testified about the events leading to the attack, resulting in a reduced sentence of just over 5 years. He served 3 years before his release in March 2013. In June 2012, the jury convicted Orban on 8 felony counts, rejecting the insanity defense and sentencing him to life plus 95 years. Instead of serving his sentence, Orban took his own life in jail, depriving Erinn of the opportunity for closure. Erinn, seeking resolution, addressed the court and Orban's family with her victim impact statement during the sentencing phase. Erinn's statement during the sentencing phase was a poignant moment of closure and courage. She spoke directly to the court and Orban's family, conveying the profound impact the events had on her life. Her words underscored the trauma she endured and the enduring effects on her sense of safety and trust. The courtroom was silent as Erinn addressed her attackers and their families. Her voice, steady despite the pain, relayed her experiences and the emotional and psychological scars left by the ordeal. She described the fear and helplessness she felt during the assault, and the ongoing anxiety and vigilance that had become part of her daily life. In her statement, Erinn also expressed her hopes for justice in a future where such heinous acts would not go unpunished. She emphasized the importance of accountability and the role of the legal system in providing some semblance of justice for victims. Orban's family, though present, listened with respect. They bore witness to the suffering inflicted by their relative and the profound impact it had on Erinn. The trial and sentencing had been a long and painful process, but Erinn's bravery in facing her attacker and speaking out was a testament to her strength and resilience. The legal proceedings concluded with Orban's sentencing and his subsequent death, but for Erinn, the journey towards healing was ongoing. Despite the closure brought by the trial, the psychological effects of the assault remained a part of her life. She continued to receive support from victim assistance programs and therapy, working towards reclaiming her sense of security and normalcy. Erinn's story became a symbol of courage and resilience in the face of adversity. Her determination to seek justice and her willingness to share her experience publicly helped raise awareness about the impact of violent crimes and the importance of supporting survivors. Thank you for joining us as we explored this harrowing yet profoundly important story. Erinn Orcutt's journey through trauma and her pursuit of justice highlight the strength and resilience of the human spirit. Her courage in the face of unimaginable challenges serves as a powerful reminder of the need for compassion and vigilance in supporting survivors of violent crimes. If you found this story compelling and insightful, please consider subscribing to our channel for more impactful content. Your support helps us continue bringing important narratives to light and fostering discussions that matter. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we delve into another gripping story that seeks to inform, inspire, and engage. Until then, take care and stay safe.